Hello and welcome back to Kilmainham Jail for another one of our Kilmainham Jail on Lockdown videos. And we're back here in the west wing of the jail. The cells on this side date from the 18th century, but on this side all the cells were added in the early 1840s. We're actually just below the corridor in which the 1916 leaders were kept. And these were added as accommodation for female prisoners and were designed by an architect called Park Neville. He's the man responsible for building the kitchen that we were looking at yesterday. But we are going to head down into the basement of the West Wing and explore the old laundries, which is where female prisoners would have worked throughout the 19th century. So we're just heading down here. It's quite dark. Ireland and Dublin in particular had a very high rate of female criminality in the 19th century. At one stage in the middle of the century in the 1850s, it was nearly 50% female, which is unprecedented. So we're coming down here. You can see these suite of very long, narrow rooms, which would have been used by the women prisoners to clean sheets and prison uniforms. But you can also see the survival of the original decorative scheme. It's kind of red and ochre and light blue. Interestingly, very classical in style, inspired, I suspect, by the Pompeian style that was very popular in the mid-19th century. You can see just here this decorative paint feature, this band that runs along the middle of the room. So it's interesting to see that this Pompeian style, which was very fashionable in the mid-19th century, even found its way down to the basement laundries of Kilmainham Jail. But we're just going to head in here into this room, which is where the original furnace that would have heated the water to wash the clothes was located. So you can look at that here, and then over here, just going to look. You have this very interesting kind of circular remnants of a circular sink, I suppose, for again for heating water and washing clothes. So as we head into the last room in the suite, you see again an interesting survival once again of the former use of these rooms, these rails, which would have been used to stretch sheets out to dry down here in the basement, and then through here brings you outside then into one of the yards of the jail, and you can see there as well the remnants of outbuildings as well. Now, as I said, Dublin had a very high rate of female criminality, nearly 50%. For context, in England and Wales at the time, it was 25% of the prison population were female. Now it's less than 5%. So in 1853, of the 2,960 prisoners in Kilmainham Jail, 1,327 were female. And again, this is very, very unusual. And that's mostly because these women, once they left the prison, they had no alternative to a life of crime. For those involved in prostitution in particular, they were considered pariahs and would have been excluded from even the poorest communities in Dublin at the time. So what you find is women repeatedly find themselves back in prison once they enter the penal system at all. In 1852, for example, they couldn't find any prisoners in Kilmainham who had been here for male prisoners who had been here for 4 sentences. They could find 25 women. You had one woman who was here, we think, for 190 different prison offences. So they, of all the groups of prisoners in Kilmainham Jail, they were probably the most marginalised, the ones who were firmly stuck in the penal system. So we'll just have another look around. And now we're going to talk about another group of female prisoners, this time women who were here during the Civil War, when for periods Kilmainham was an exclusively female jail. And during the summer of 1923, a group of these women decided that they were going to escape from the jail by digging a tunnel. And this is the tunnel. Um, Margaret Buckley, who was their commanding officer of the prisoners in the jail, she described how they didn't have proper tools. They were using spoons, their hands. They had managed to find a way into the laundry via one of the windows from the exercise yard outside, where they used to come to play games and just walk about. And they used to sneak in here, and they had a system to warn each other if a guard was approaching. So if a guard was approaching, they would hum the tune of Kevin Barry, and when it was safe to continue, they would hum O'Donnell Aboo. Eventually, their tunnel was discovered by the matron of the jail, and she had a conversation with Margaret Buckley about it. Margaret Buckley is very funny. She talks about that the worst thing was she referred to their tunnel as a hole in the laundry. And Margaret Buckley said she described it as a hole, this altar on which all our hopes had been placed. I think for Margaret Buckley, that was the most insulting thing about the whole thing. And the matron knew it was them because she found some shoes and a cardigan belonging to one of the prisoners, Sheila Humphreys, down by the hole. But interestingly, Sheila Humphreys did leave instructions written in her cell for any future prisoners in Kilmainham, if they needed to escape, that there was the beginnings of a tunnel down in the basement. I suspect that maybe the authorities probably let them continue for quite a while because it was a way of occupying these prisoners were full of energy, and as we know at the moment, it can be hard sometimes being confined for long periods of time. Anyway, that's it for today, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon. Stay safe.